Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on The Story Within, we retell those moments honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. I fixed the boutonniere on my son's lapel while the saxophone drew a clear line over Lake Michigan. I turned the pin so the pedals faced his heart. Evan stood easy in his blue suit. "Looks good, Mom," he said, and for a breath the years folded. My phone hummed in my clutch, one vibration then another. 4 spare words lit the screen. "Step out. Don't tell the groom. No name, just certainty." I didn't look at Evan. I pressed his sleeve once and let go. "I need a little air," I said. The rooftop ballroom glittered with linen and long-stemmed glasses. Banners of lake wind lifted the hem of tablecloths. The skyline laid itself out in steel and water. I moved along the edge of the floor, passing a tower of cupcakes and a knot of cousins taking photos. The music blurred behind me. The service corridor took the sound down to a thud. Tile replaced carpet. Coffee and metal replaced lilies. Halfway to the freight elevator, a young woman stepped from a side door. Dark blazer hair pinned neat, a tag clipped low. Jada, assistant manager. "Ms. Brooks," she said, already certain. "Would you come with me, please?" I followed her past a rack of spotless glasses and a cart stacked with silver domes. She pushed through a gray door and the city opened loading bay. Delivery vans idling, lake wind coming in clean. 2 people stood near a marked sedan, a woman in a navy jacket, a man with a notebook, both with the posture of those who watch for a living. The woman showed a badge. "Sergeant Dana Morales, Chicago Police." The man lifted his Detective Henry Park. "Evelyn Brooks," I said, "mother of the groom." "We know," Morales replied. "Ms. Reyes contacted us from inside. We texted you so you could leave without a scene." Ms. Reyes set a leather folio on a metal table. Her hand shook once, then steadied. "I was in the bridal suite," she said. "There was a notary I didn't recognize in a folder that isn't on our vendor list. I checked the system twice. The name doesn't exist." Park opened the folio with care. Inside were copies with yellow flags. The top page carried a title, Care Support Mandate. Beneath it, in smaller print, Limited Power of Attorney. A signature block waited blank. "Why send for me?" I asked. "Why not go to my son?" "Because that room has ears," Morales said. "Because whoever set this on the table benefits if people panic. Our first responsibility is your safety. Our second is to keep your son's wedding from turning into something you can't take back." Jada slid her phone across. "I took pictures. I thought it was a beauty schedule until I saw your name typed under a line it didn't belong on." She hesitated. There were champagne flutes laid out. One had a thread of gold tied around the stem. Staff were told it was decorative. "We don't mark decor that way." "You think it was meant for me?" "I can't prove intent," she said. "It was poured separately. No other glass had the thread." Park placed a second page alongside the first. In the margin, someone had written a time, 10:30 a.m., and the words, "Family brunch photos by windows." He tapped the note. "We think the plan is to make paperwork look like celebration. A mother signs something in good light." I kept my eyes on this table. "My son is a decent man," I said. "Decency is exactly what schemes borrow," Morales answered. "We're asking you to look." I read. The language was polished and vague in the places vagueness pays. A clause shifted responsibility for convenience. Another allowed a transfer to ensure continuity of care. There were initials penciled faint in the margins, a rehearsal. A man's name appeared where counsel should Graham Pierce. Another, Veronica Pierce, sat above family representative. "Madison's parents," I said. I reached for the handkerchief in my clutch and found the square my husband had carried to job sites, his initials softened by years. I pressed the cloth once, not for sentiment, but steadiness. Morales's voice came level. "Ms. Brooks, we would prefer you don't mention this to your son tonight. If you trust us, you'll walk back through that door and smile like nothing's wrong. You will not be alone. We're here because Ms. Reyes did the right thing before fear talked her out of it." "I'm sorry to bring this to you today," Jada said, and I believed both the apology and the resolve. I couldn't unsee it. I looked from the copies to their faces. Somewhere above us, the band changed songs. I thought of Evan as a boy squaring his shoulders before stepping through a classroom door. "All right," I said. "I'll go back in. I'll behave as if nothing has happened." I picked up the top sheet and let it fall into place. "You'll have whatever cooperation I can give without ruining my son's day." Morales nodded once. Jada gathered the iPad. Park closed the folio and slid it under his arm. I fixed my clutch under my palm and stepped toward the gray door. The hallway waited on the other side, cool and ordinary. I pressed the bar and went in. The light shifted back to ballroom gold and bright. A server drifted past with a tray of flutes, stems chiming. I walked toward them and then past my face set to calm. At the edge of the dance floor, Evan saw me and smiled like the sun had moved an inch. I matched it with one I'd practiced for years, polite, steady, durable, and kept walking until the room found its rhythm again. I stayed through the photographs as if the lake wind could pin me steady. Evan laughed with his friends, a hand on one shoulder, pure as a boy who never learned to measure rooms for danger. When the band slid into something slow, I drifted toward the service curtain. Jada waited there with a tray and an expression that said she had already counted the steps. Loading bay, she whispered, and kept walking without looking back. The gray door shut out the saxophone. Behind the vans, the light was colder, truer. Sergeant Morales stood with her arms folded, Detective Park with a folder tucked against his ribs. "Thank you for returning," Morales said. We moved quickly. Park opened the folder. Not the leather folio from upstairs, this was their copy, clipped and labeled. The first sheet was a printout from a bank portal, red flags along the right margin. "Scheduled transfer," he said. "Amount 1.24 million. Status pending. Completion window Monday 11:59 a.m. Memorial Day," Morales added. "Banks close, offices thin. People push paper under the banner of celebration." Park laid a second page on top. It wasn't paper so much as a notice, clean type on hardstock, a due date, centered as if it were a headline. "Short-term bridge," he said. $480,000 due tomorrow at 8 p.m. Borrower Graham Pierce, creditor Marco Vidal. The numbers did what they always do. They drained heat and left shape. I said nothing. Park continued, voice even. "Pressure explains pace. Timing explains theatrics. It also explains this." He nodded to Jada. She lifted a sealed pouch. A champagne flute lay inside, rinsed in light. At the base, a glint of fine metallic strand. "The gold thread," Jada said. "I swapped it before the toast. I told the bar I needed it for polishing. It never left my hand until it reached their team." "Chain of custody," Morales said quietly. "We'll screen it. If nothing shows, it's still an anomaly. If something shows, it anchors the rest." I watched my breath cloud and vanish in the shaded air. "You want me to help you collect what you need," I said. "We want you to be safe," and seen Morales corrected. "The second tends to protect the first." Park reached into a slim case and produced a pair of slender frames. "These sit like any reading glasses," he said. "The lens captures what passes your gaze. No tilt, no flourish. Just look where you would look." He set them on the table and took out a fountain pen look-alike, dark and ordinary. "Clip this on your jacket. It picks up audio. If you click twice in succession, it leaves a timestamp we can flag later." Morales opened her palm to show a pearl button the size of a lentil fixed to a discreet backing. "This replaces the top button on your blouse," she said. 2 taps. Fast. "That's the distress signal. When we receive it, we're on a 90 to 120-second clock. We're in the room before the second hand completes a circle." I touched the frames, then the pen. The metal felt cool, factual. "And if they move me," I asked. "New room equals risk," Morales said. "Isolation equals risk. Either one is your signal. Do not negotiate location. You do not owe anyone a reason beyond breath." Park slid a thin folder toward me. Inside sat a single document with a watermark you could only see when you breathed on it. He angled it to the light. A faint constellation surfaced, vanished. "Decoy," he said. "We mirrored the structure we found upstairs, but nothing here holds. The watermark is ours. The signature you place becomes proof of pressure, not transfer." Jada stood very still, hands pressed along the seam of her skirt. "Veronica likes window light," she said softly. "She tells photographers it makes skin honest. If she says better light, she means a smaller room near the east windows. Fewer bodies, fewer questions." I looked at the lake, a sheet of hammered silver beyond the loading ramp. "Madison's parents would do this during their daughter's wedding," I said. The words came out simple because they were. "Money digs its own hallway," Morales said. "Decorum just hangs the pictures." A delivery truck coughed, then rolled away. The bay filled with a clean lake hush. I picked up the glasses and settled them in my clutch. The pen followed. The button formed a small moon under my thumb. "I will not speak to my son," I said. "Not tonight. I will not make a scene for strangers to dine on." "No scenes," Morales agreed. "Just clarity." We left the bay as if we had only checked the weather. The hall returned with coffee and linen and the measured clink of hotel life smoothing its own edges. I slid back into the ballroom through the same service curtain and found my seat by the hydrangeas. Evan caught my eye from across the dance floor, relief easing his shoulders. He mouthed, "You good?" I nodded once. He turned back to the man, clapping him on the back. A few minutes later, Veronica Pierce floated by in silk the color of poured cream. Her perfume was expensive and faint, the kind that insists it's the room, not her. She leaned down, her smile edged in sympathy you could feel, only because it pressed a fraction too hard. "Everything all right, Evelyn? Long days these," she said. "Lovely," I said. "You chose a beautiful hotel." "The light is kind to everyone here," she answered. "Tomorrow will be even better. Family brunch, just us. 10:30 in the penthouse. We'll tidy little things. It's calmer without the evening crowd." Her eyes flicked to the glasses I wore and approved of my face without seeing it. She moved on to greet a cousin with an embrace that looked like a signature she could write in her sleep. I rose when Evan reached me because a son only gets one first dance with his mother. He took my hand. His palm was warm through the sweat that comes with nerves and joy. He spun me gently, careful of my shoes. "Thank you for today," he said. "You made the boutonniere behave." "You picked a good suit," I said. "It does most of the work." He grinned boyish under the weight of a tie. For a minute there was only the simple geometry of sway and step, the skyline folding along the glass behind him. When the song ended, I let him go toward Madison, who wore bright happiness like people wear a new city, certain it will always feel this new. I found a chair by the railing and poured water into a glass my own hand could trust. Jada approached with a coffee pot and poured as if she had never seen me before. The crease at the corner of her mouth was the only acknowledgement between us. The night thinned without forcing itself into drama. Toasts were offered, cupcakes surrendered. The lake swallowed the last light and returned a field of stitched reflections boat to hotel window. When it was time, I kissed my son's cheek and told him he had chosen well because that is what he believed and what I needed him to feel in the moment that still belonged to him. My room faced the marina. I set the clutch on the desk and lined the day's small artifacts in a row, the glasses, the pen, the square of handkerchief softened by a lifetime in men's pockets. I could hear the city in fragments, a siren far off a door, close a laugh, rising, falling. A knock came, 2 firm taps. I opened the door to Morales with her jacket off and a clipboard under one arm. Park stood behind her with a small case. "Quick fit," Morales said, "then we disappear." At the desk, Park adjusted the frames so the lens sat level with my eye. "Look at that lamp," he said. "Now the door handle." "Good." Morales replaced the top blouse button with the pearl. It settled there as if it had always belonged. She slid the pen across the wood and watched me clip it beneath the lapel of a cardigan I changed into. "If anyone comments on glare, say they're transition lenses," she said. "If anyone asks about the pen, say your husband bought it years ago and you can't break the habit." "My husband bought wrenches," I said. "But I can tell the story without a lie." "That works," she said, almost smiling. She opened a velvet box and took out a second pen, identical in weight and color. "This one carries a microscopic serial in the clip," she said. "If it leaves your possession, we trace the moment. If it stays, we still have the audio." Belt and suspenders. Park set a document on the blotter. The watermark lifted under the desk lamp and sank again. "Decoy," he said. "If they push a signature on anything, you sign ours first. If they swap, you stall." Neutral phrases only. Ask them to walk you through a clause. Ask for a coffee. Let the clock do what clocks do. I read the first line and closed the folder. "I can make sense of columns without letting them make sense of me." "That's all we ask," Morales said. She glanced at the window where the marina masts clicked faintly against their lines. "We'll be in the building early. You won't see us." I walked them to the door. "You'll hear me," I said. 2 taps. Park nodded once, 2 taps. After they left, I put the glasses and pen in the clutch and smoothed the handkerchief over them as if cloth could steady steel. I practiced 2 sentences in the mirror, the kind that sound like nothing and hold room for air. "I'd like to read this again. I'm not sure I follow that line." The voice that came back belonged to the woman who had balanced ledgers before breakfast for 30 years and never once confused speed with care. In the morning, I would put on a dress with a pocket that held its shape and a face that did the same. For now, the marina ticked and breathed. The city dimmed to a hush that was not peace but preparation. I turned off the lamp and lay back awake without strain like a door left on the latch. Morning laid a clean strip of light across the marina masts, ticking against their lines. I dressed without haste, slid the slender frames into place, clipped the black pen beneath my lapel, and pressed the pearl once to feel where it sat. The clutch closed with the soft click of habit. Lake air came cool through the revolving doors as I crossed to the elevator marked penthouse. The suite faced east. White orchids leaned in crystal vases. Linen triangles stood like sails along the plates. Windows lifted the lake into the room so the water seemed to breathe with us. Jada moved at a staff pace, present invisible checking cups, smoothing a crease that didn't need smoothing. "Good morning, Miss Brooks," she said, eyes on the tray. "Coffee will be fresh in 2 minutes." "Thank you," I said, the words mild and ordinary. Veronica Pierce arrived first, silk the color of a dove's wing. Graham followed with the quick warmth of someone trained to make strangers feel like old friends. Madison set a row of gift boxes along a sideboard, her smile wide in bright happiness tailored to fit. "Evelyn," Veronica said, extending both hands, as if to gather me into the family. "You found us. Isn't this light kind?" "Everyone looks rested in it." "It's a clear morning," I said. "Perfect for keeping distractions down," she answered and turned the phrase into a compliment for the hotel. Her glance touched my glasses, friendly and brief, then moved on. Graham gestured toward the table near the window. "Sit where the lake is square in the frame," he said. "Breakfast tastes better with a view." He placed a leather folio beside a cup as if it were simply another plate. Only a few tidy-ups for the accounts. Paper that keeps peace. Jada poured coffee for each of us, wrist steady, sleeves quiet. The camera sat where my eye already was, The audio clip rested against woven wool. I let the view do some of the talking. The lake had a way of making every room honest. Veronica opened the folio. "This is very dull," she said cheerfully. "Care support contingencies, things that let the kids enjoy being young without worrying about details." "I prefer dull to messy," I said lightly and turned the front page so a corner caught the light. Watermark rose fell. Not the same as the one in my clutch, close enough to look like cents. Madison circled with a plate of croissants, offering first to me. The pastry flaked at the edges, glittering with crystals that looked like morning. "We wanted it to be simple," she said. "Folks get overwhelmed after a big night." "Simple earns its name when it reads clean," I said, and set the croissant down intact. Graham unfurled a pen that gleamed like a promise. "No rush. We can talk through." "There's a number on page 3 we landed on after looking at balances, a cushion, 1.24. He said it as if it had always been true, as if the decimal had been born there. I traced a finger along the margin and lifted my gaze not to him but through him, letting the lake sit in his background. 1.24, I repeated, as if repeating helped me hear which it does. "Still that figure today." Veronica's smile thinned by a hair, then restored itself. "Roughly," she said. "Markets breathe." "Of course," I said. "Numbers don't like to hold their breath." Jada set a fresh carafe down. The reflection of the window ran along its side like a ribbon of light. She angled it so the glass showed the folio from a second vantage. The lens at my eye did the first. A phone thrummed against wood. Veronica's screen lit for a heartbeat. "Voice memo, 11:07, get signature before 11:30. Her fingers covered the glass with the small speed of someone accustomed to closing doors before light reaches in. "Photographer reminder," she said, laughter faint. "They like to schedule their art." "I've met a few," I said. "They measure the sun for a living." Graham's pocket buzzed next. He checked to turn the phone so the display wouldn't be rude, then turned it back. A name flashed just long enough to stick. Vidal. Missed call, 10:15. The line tightened under his jaw and released. "People think weekends are free," he said, a smile that forgot to take the tension with it. "But bills don't keep calendars." I folded the first page back so the figure 1.24 sat where anyone could see it if they chose. "Walk me through this section," I said. "My eyes are old enough to miss a fine line." "Continuity language," Veronica said quickly. "Care if needed. Standard. Keeps the kids from guessing between them." "And this one," I said, touching a clause that used convenience twice. "It repeats itself." "It's legal," Graham said, as if law was only an accent. "They like belts and suspenders." "Do they?" I said, and let the words settle. Madison's smile flickered, then steadied. "We only want what's good for everyone," she said. "A day like this." The sentence opened and didn't close. She picked up the plate and moved to the sideboard to align boxes that were already aligned. Evan's reflection reached the doorway before he did. Tie loosened jacket off the boy under the suit showing through. "There you are," he said, warmth, first curiosity catching up. "They said you were up here." "Come say hello," Veronica chimed. "We're finishing a little housekeeping." "What kind?" he asked, already moving toward my chair. "Nothing you need to carry," I set a hand to his forearm. "Eat something." "You didn't touch a plate last night." He looked at me, then at the folio, then back at me. "If you don't want to, you don't have to," he said quiet. It wasn't defiance, it was the simple line of loyalty born early. He kissed my temple, hand warm on my shoulder, and stepped away. 10 minutes, he told Madison, then I'm stealing Mom for a walk. "Steal her after coffee," Veronica sang. "We're nearly done." She slipped a sheet from the folio and aligned the corners with a neatness that wanted to be noticed. Jada poured a small gravity in her movements, eyes on liquid mind elsewhere. The craft caught Veronica's screen again as a notification pulsed and dimmed. Jada tilted to capture the reflection the way some people collect birdsong. Graham tapped the figure on the page as if tapping made it harmless. "This gets everyone settled," he said. "We close out small confusions before they find reasons to grow. I let quiet do its work. Numbers enjoy silence. In stillness, they reveal what they were trying to say while we talked over them." 1.24, I said again, but softer like tasting. "Not round. A bill more than a gift." Veronica laced her fingers. "You're practical," she said. "So are we." "Practical families get to enjoy holidays." "Practical families don't overreach," I said, but it sounded like a thought, not a stance, the way you say something while making sure you saw it right. Madison settled beside Evan's empty chair as if she needed a shape to hold. "We're trying to start well," she said. "Everyone keeps telling us it matters to start well." "Starting well and taking cleanly aren't the same sport," I said, and gave her a smile with no teeth. Wind lifted across the lake and touched the window, a motion you could hear only if the room had stopped listening to itself. Jada's phone lay on the tray, dark as a small stone. Graham's lay face down on the cloth screen, cooling. Veronica's lay under her fingers like a sleeping animal. "Shall we sign?" Veronica said, bright again. "Or would you like us to read this line by line while breakfast gets cold?" "Line by line helps me taste my coffee," I said. "You go first." She began in the tone of someone reading charity bylaws to donors, pausing to translate only when translation flattered the listener. I let the cadence move, let the lens see, let the pen listen. When she reached the clause that shifted control for convenience, I raised a finger the way a teacher raises a finger when a child is skipping steps. This word, I said. Convenience for whom? For the family as a whole, she said quickly. It spares disagreements. Disagreements deserve daylight, I said, and turned the paper a quarter inch so the lake could watch too. Graham leaned in, elbows near the edge. He wouldn't cross if he were calm. No one is trying to corner you, he said. We're smoothing. Corners don't announce themselves, I said. They simply appear when walls meet. Madison's mouth tightened. For a moment there was the sound a room makes when something breaks far away and the air arrives first. She looked at her hands, then at me. Maybe we should slow down, she said to her mother. We can't. Veronica's smile never left her face. Only the muscles at her temple spoke. Darling, breathing room makes people anxious. Best to finish while the coffee is hot. Jada set a new cup beside my hand without touching my knuckles. The photographer just texted, she murmured, voice-pitched to Veronica. He says the window in the lounge is even cleaner right now. He can catch the signing beautifully there. Veronica brightened in relief. That had somewhere to go. There, she said to Graham, I told you, better light. Let's move where the lake frames nicely. She rose, silk sighing. Graham gathered the folio with an owner's touch, checking once that the pen was in place. Madison stood slower than both, as if she could soften the floor by the time her feet reached it. I lifted my clutch and felt the small weight of the pearl beneath the fabric. The windows held the lake steady, blue, and unwinking. Veronica smoothed the tablecloth one last time, a theatrical kindness, and crossed to the door that opened on the short corridor. The lounge is just down, she said over her shoulder, not turning to see who followed. The light there is divine. The corridor held its breath the way hotels do when doors close behind laughter. Veronica didn't look back. Silk moved like water ahead of us. Graham's shoes made an impatient hush on the carpet. Madison kept near the wall, hands at her sides, fingers pressed flat as if she didn't trust them to stay still. The lounge is just down, Veronica called, voice turned bright. The light there is divine. We turned left, then right. The noise from the brunch fell away like tide. A door stood ajar. Inside, drapes had been drawn to sheer, not block. The lake lay across the windows like a sheet of hammered glass. 2 armless chairs faced a low table positioned to frame the view. No staff, no plates. Space arranged for a photograph that never cared about breakfast. Graham set the folio down with a small proprietary tap. Here we are, he said, and produced the same pen he'd offered before. No pressure, just your name, Mrs. Brooks. I placed my clutch on the table and sat where he pointed, turning a quarter so the lake held the edge of my vision. Veronica stood behind my shoulder as if to shepherd the scene into a single flattering truth. Let's be efficient, she said lightly. The family will want you downstairs. I let my thumb find the pearl under the fabric. 1 tap to feel it. 2 taps to say what needed saying. I pressed twice. Fast. The button took the message and kept its own counsel. Graham slid a page free, aligning corners as if order could make intent gentler. Care support mandate, he said. Continuity. The kids won't have to weigh every small thing. Madison stayed near the door. When our eyes met, she looked at the floor. A wind touched the glass. The light shifted a fraction as if the lake had just taken a deeper breath. Before we begin, I said I'd like to see the section you called convenience. It repeats. Legal habit, Graham said, smile taut, belt and suspenders. And the power of attorney, language, I went on, tone mild as if I were budgeting for a church roof. I want to read that sentence at the edge. It's limited, Veronica said briskly, entirely standard. You'll be comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with reading, I said. Her laugh chimed against the window like a small fork on crystal. Of course. Graham angled the folio so the signature line shone. It won't take long. It rarely does, I answered, and reached for the pen, clipped under my lapel, the one Park had placed in my hand last night. The weight sat right. The clip's tiny serial caught nothing but light. Veronica's fingers found the back of my chair. Ink here, she murmured. That's all. I placed the decoy page from my clutch on top of the stack as if we had been on the sheet all along. The watermark lived in the paper like a constellation you could only see if you breathed on it. I breathed. It surfaced and sank. Madison's breath hitched. Graham didn't notice. Veronica did. What is that? She said, crisp but soft. A question intended to sound like curiosity. The part I'm willing to read, I said. She leaned and for one sliver of a second looked uncertain which document sat beneath her hand. Then she recovered and chose confidence like a scarf. Either page works, she said. They mirror each other. Convenient, I said, and wrote the first curve of my name. The pen's nib spoke to the paper with a dry whisper. It marked the decoy the way a tide marks sand, clean, indelible enough. The room contracted around the sound. Veronica's fingers tightened once precisely where the chair back met my shoulder. Graham exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath for weeks, and decided at last to join the living. There, he said too quickly. That wasn't so bad. I set the pen down. Hard things hide in easy manners, I said, because sometimes an observation is the only mercy available. Madison took a small step forward. Maybe we should. Darling, Veronica said without turning. This is routine. She lifted the signed page by its corner, prepared to tuck it back into the folio with the rest. The door opened. Not a burst, not yet, a clean opening into a sharper air. 2 officers entered with hands visible posture, certain voices level. Chicago Police, the first said. No one move. The room stilled into clarity. Veronica froze with the page suspended. Graham's free hand slid fractionally toward his phone, then stopped when a second officer's gaze met his and held. Sergeant Morales stepped in behind them, jacket on now badge, plain tempo measured. Detective Park followed with gloves already pulled snug and a small evidence case open like a book. Mrs. Brooks Morales said without looking at me, remain seated. I remained seated. Morales's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. This is a lawful search, she said. We have authority to collect documents and devices connected to an attempted fraudulent transfer and associated coercive acts. Veronica found her voice. This is a misunderstanding, she said softly, fingers loosening page, beginning to droop. Park stepped to the table and held out a clear pouch. Please set the paper down into this, he said even. Corner first. Thank you. He sealed it, labeled it, and held it to the light where the decoy's watermark whispered and went quiet again. Document secured 1123, he said to the small recorder clipped to his lapel. Another officer, Reed, by his tag, lifted the folio's cover with 2 fingers and photographed each page before sliding them into sleeves with tabbed numbers. Graham started to speak. Reed ignored the noise the way professionals ignore fire alarms at drill time. Phones, Morales said evenly. Graham hesitated a fraction too long. Reed extended a hand that did not belong to a man waiting to bargain. Graham placed the phone on the table. Veronica did the same, her thumb already away from any button that might darken or erase. Park tilted Veronica's device just enough to capture the lock screen with his body camera, then slid it into an evidence bag. Device logged. Earlier notification observed, he murmured. Morales moved a half step toward the door and spoke into her radio. Team 3, secure the corridor. Team 4, confirm access to Marina Stair from this level. Copy. Static answered, then a voice. 4 copies. Stairwell to dock is closed and watched. Madison stood 2 steps back of everyone, watching everything as if her eyes had only now learned to record. When Morales turned to her, the sergeant's face changed by degrees, a small easing at the corners. Ma'am, Morales said, you will be separated for a recorded statement. You are not under arrest at this moment. Do not touch the table. Madison nodded. I understand. Graham wet his mouth. You can't crash a private brunch and grab papers, he said, finding outrage like an old suit. Morales looked at him and then at the window where the lake went on being lake, as if that were the only job it had ever wanted. Mr. Pierce, she said, I can and I have. Your counsel can meet you at the station. Veronica reached for the folio, again reflex more than plan. Park caught the motion with a stillness that stopped her hand an inch short of the leather. Do not interfere with the collection, he said. Everything is photographed, fingerprinted, and sealed. Reed, halfway to the door, paused. Sergeant, he said, bar cart outside, flutes set for service. Morales nodded once. Bag them all, confirm any markings. Reed returned with a rack of sparkling stems balanced high on one palm. In the second row, a single base caught light different from the rest. Fine metallic thread cinched at the stem like a secret. Here, Reed said. Park held a swab poised as Reed set the glass down. He photographed the thread, the knot, the exact angle at which light turned it from invisible to seen. Then he sealed the flute with the same matter-of-fact tenderness you use to put away a child's drawing just before it tears. Glass secured 1125, he said to the recorder. Chain intact. Morales's radio cracked again. Copy subject Vidal, located lower garage, a voice reported. Stopped at exit ramp. Ledger and vehicle names match. Graham's shoulders fell as if someone had told him his posture had been borrowed. Veronica closed her eyes and opened them the way you do when you want to wake inside your own morning. It isn't what you think, she said, but the room had already decided what it was. The door filled with another presence, Evan in shirt sleeves, hair a little wild, the boy visible through the groom again. He stopped when he saw the badges and the bags and me sitting still at the table. Mom, he said, quiet and not yet afraid. What's happening? Sir Reed said to him, gentle but absolute, stay by the threshold. Evan's gaze swung to Madison. She didn't move. Her hands were open at her sides like someone midway through a surrender she hadn't rehearsed. Madison, he said softly, what is this? She managed a sentence that tried to hold 2 truths and failed. We were trying to start right, she whispered. He nodded once as if acknowledging a score kept somewhere else. His eyes returned to me. I'm okay, I said. The plainness steadied him a step. Morales gestured, and 2 officers flanked Veronica and Graham without fuss. Park swept the last document into a pouch labeled Sign the Edge and set it into the case. Reed slid the rack of flutes into a bin where foam braced them like small ships in a hard sea. Mrs. Pierce, Mr. Pierce Morales said you're being detained on suspicion of attempted fraud and related offenses. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say." Veronica looked at Madison, then the first true look of the morning, and whatever passed between them didn't land anywhere in the room. Madison stared at the lake and blinked twice hard. Evan took one careful step into the lounge. Reed lifted a palm. Evan stopped. "I'll walk out with you," he told me, voice steadying as it crossed to me. "When they say I can." "You'll walk out," I said. "When they say." Park closed the evidence case. Morales tipped her head, once satisfied that the list in her mind matched the items on the table. The lake brightened a fraction sun shrugging past a cloud. Somewhere in the hallway, a service cart rolled by, steady wheels, and china soft as a reminder that hotels endure whatever happens in them. "Clear the room," Morales said. "We're done here." Graham stiffened as the cuffs found his wrists. Veronica's chin lifted in old habit with no job left to do. They went toward the corridor surrounded by plain clothes and duty. Madison didn't follow. An officer guided her gently to the opposite doorway and spoke low. She nodded. I couldn't hear the words. I could see the effect a small, unadorned collapse of posture and the choice to keep standing anyway. Evan stayed at the threshold until Reed stepped aside and gave him a line across the carpet. He crossed it and came to me. "You need anything?" he said. "Water," I said, and heard the truth in that simple request, something clear, something that remembered its own shape. He poured from the carafe Jada had left hours ago and set the glass in my hand. The lake lay in it upside down. The room righted itself in the rim. "Thank you," I said. He touched my shoulder, light and sure. The police moved, the radios clicked, the paper slept inside plastic. The door stood open on a hallway that remembered laughter without asking for it back. I lifted the glass and drank. The water did exactly what water does, went where it was needed, and disappeared into usefulness. Hallway air moved around the uniforms and the quiet click of radios. Evan's hand stayed on my shoulder until Reed gave him room to guide me out. We passed a tray of untouched pastries, and the view of the lake laid flat against the glass. In the elevator mirror, we were a small, tidy procession officers, 2 parents in cuffs, a bride without a bouquet, a son with his jaw set, and me with a clutch I didn't need to open. By afternoon, I sat behind a pane of glass in a room that smelled like paper and polish. A clerk swore me in. Across the divide, Veronica faced forward. Graham rubbed the groove where his ring had worn the skin thin, and Madison held a cup of water as if it might tell her what to do with her hands. The state's attorney kept his voice level. He didn't decorate what he had. Exhibit tags, stacked like small flags, the folio pages. The decoy bearing my signature and the watermark that rose and sank under light. The lock screen capture voice memo, 11:07, get signature before 11:30. Call log at 10:15 Vidal, the flute with its gold thread sealed under plastic. The lab sheet with a line of text, and a number no one argued with. Park spoke to the chain who held what, when, where it went next. Morales marked the timeline without drama. The defense made the motions defense makes. The judge listened the way judges do when their bench is an old habit and their patience has edges. He ruled on custody of devices and set conditions. He asked whether counsel needed anything further on the record. He asked me one question. "Ms. Brooks, did anyone tell you you were obligated to sign these documents?" "No, Your Honor." "Did anyone attempt to prevent you from leaving the room?" "No." "That will do." He set a calendar that left no space for confusion. Veronica blinked at the sound of dates. Graham stared at the seal over the bench. Madison wiped a single line of mascara from the base of her thumb. When the deputy touched my elbow to lead me out, Evan rose from the back row. He didn't say a word. The set of his shoulders said enough. Chicago puts long afternoons into the lake. That evening, it gave one back. I sat on a small terrace with a low rail and a sky the color of linen steeped in tea. The marina ticked. Jada walked toward me with careful steps, an envelope held at the corners. "You didn't have to," she said before she opened it. Money folded, once tuition printed on the note. A year to finish the degree that had been waiting for a breath she hadn't thought she could take. "I wanted it clean," I said. "Paper that travels in daylight." Her throat worked. She nodded. She put the envelope away like something that could shatter and didn't. "You were steady," she said. "You were early," I said. We sat without filling the silence. A boat engine turned over somewhere beyond the breakwater and settled to a patient hum. Evan arrived with 2 cups that smelled of chamomile and honey. "Ms. Reyes," he said. "Jada," she corrected. "Jada," he said again, and the gratitude in his voice did not need adjectives. He handed me a cup and rested the other on the rail. "They're moving fast," he said softly, eyes on the water. Phones pulled, accounts frozen, counsel retained. The lake held what he didn't say. He let the facts sit between us where they could breathe. "You can stay at my place," I said. "The guest room still believes it's a room." He smiled at that, small and guarded, as if a boy had looked in on a man and found the door unlocked. "I will," he said. He didn't offer a speech. He reached for my free hand and held it like a thing that belonged where it was. When Jada stood to go, I pressed her fingers once. Walk on the main streets, I said. Let people see you. They will, she said. I'm not hiding. She left down the wooden stairs, the envelope held close, her silhouette taking the last warm edge of the light with it. Weeks turned into a calendar shape. Paper moved, then stopped. Orders landed. A date above a line became a day. In a courtroom paneled with the kind of wood that remembers more names than it repeats, the state put its case in a row. The defense negotiated what it could. Veronica stared at the table as words were read. Graham's jaw worked like a man measuring a cost he could finally count. Madison spoke when asked. She did not spill more than she could carry. The judge took time where time mattered and spared it where it didn't. He set restitution and a protective order that did not need sound to hold. He told the clerk to record the terms clearly so no one would mistake what had been said for what they wished had been said. When he lifted his eyes to me, he gave a nod that belonged to the bench, not to me. Outside the courthouse, the light had the clean feel of a front passing. Evan waited under the steps. He had shaved too close and missed a crescent near his ear. He smiled without performance. Ready, he asked. I tucked the handkerchief into my clutch and smoothed the fabric for no reason other than the way touch steadies touch. Ready, I said. We crossed to the lake without hurrying. Boats knocked softly at their ties. A gull traced the same loop it had no doubt traced yesterday and would again tomorrow. We stood at the rail. The city threw its reflection into the water and didn't ask for it back. I keep thinking about the first time you let go of my hand, he said. You were afraid I'd fall. I was afraid you would run, I said. You did both. He laughed, once the sound catching, then clearing. He leaned his shoulder into mine. We watched a narrow skiff cut a quick, clean line and then widen into nothing. Mom, he said, and left it there because the rest didn't need air yet. A breeze lifted the hair at my temple and died. I looked at the lake. It held steady. So did we. We turned toward the hotel lights, not in ceremony, not in retreat, but in step. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.